Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get things started. Perfect. My name is Jessica Green, and I'll be kind of helping to host the webinar today. And I'll turn on my camera and say hi to everybody in just a little bit. But welcome to our webinar. It's brought to you by Namely, Intuit, and TSheets. So Namely is an all-in-one HR, payroll, and benefits platform created to help mid-sized companies build a better workplace. It's used by some of the world's most innovative and exciting companies in media, technology, commerce, and more. Intuit is dedicated to powering prosperity around the world with its intuitive web, mobile, and cloud solutions. Industry-leading products like Mint, QuickBooks, and TSheets help consumers, small business owners, and the self-employed achieve their dreams. TSheets by QuickBooks is a top-rated employee time tracking and scheduling solution that helps small businesses save time and money on payroll. So the three of us are partnering together today, and technically the two of us because TSheets is owned by Intuit, are partnering together on this webinar today to talk through how to craft a PTO policy that works for everyone. Before we begin, I just wanted to go over a few logistical notes for those of you on the webinar today. There's a Q&A, which you'll find either on the top or bottom panel, depending on your browser, and it will be active throughout the course of the webinar. So please submit your questions throughout, and we'll either answer those live or we'll follow up with them on the recording. The webinar will be recorded and downloadable as a slide deck, which I know was mentioned in the chat already, but just so everybody's on the same page, it will be you'll be sent a downloadable slide deck, and the webinar will be recorded, and that will be provided to you as a follow-up resource later this afternoon. And lastly, this webinar is worth 1 hour of SHRM and 1 HRCI credit. Please note that those codes will only be provided on the live webinar at the end of the webinar. These will not be noted in the recording due to the SHRM and HRCI standards. So let's begin. There's a universal question that candidates typically ask when beginning a new job. How much time off do I receive each year? At the federal level, the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, doesn't mandate that companies pay their employees for time not spent working, vacations, sick leave, or holidays, for example. The FSLA states that these benefits are matters of agreement between an employer and an employee. Americans have actually been fighting for paid vacation for 100 years. So in order to remain competitive in an ever-growing market, it's imperative for companies to build employee loyalty. Time off policies in its many forms is a powerful tool to do just that. A culture that encourages work-life balance through thoughtful PTO policies makes employees feel valued and motivated. How do you take your PTO policy to the next level, ensuring that your program is both mutually beneficial for the employee and the employer? We'll cover that in this presentation. So just a quick look at our talking points for today. So here's an overview of our topics. We're going to speak through unlimited PTO, reduced seasonal hours, paid leave, remote work and flexible hours, time off compliance, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll share those SHRM and HRCI codes. All right, now let's say hi. So I'm going to go ahead and pop my camera on and just say hi to everybody for a second. So hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Green, and I work for TSheets by QuickBooks. So I'm part of the time tracking segment for Intuit. So TSheets is the time tracking segment for Intuit, and I've been with TSheets for 4 years, Intuit since January when we were acquired. So I work with accountants, bookkeepers, CPAs to provide education for them and then help them get acclimated into our pro program. So we have a program for accounting professionals where they get educational resources, they get a free TSheets account, and they can refer clients to us. So I work in that world, helping accountants see the value of time tracking for themselves and for their clients. And then I do travel a bit, making sure to go to conferences and meet them as I go. And I have two incredible panelists with me today. I have Robin and Michael. I'll go ahead and introduce Robin first. She can wave and say hi to you guys. Robin has been with Intuit since in 2002, and she served in a variety of capacities in the benefits space. In her current position, Robin creates and drives the global vision, strategy, and execution of time away, time tracking, and workers' compensation offerings. She handles all phases of these programs, ranging from requirements to delivery for all countries where Intuit has a presence. And then Michael has joined us from Namely, and he joined Namely this year as a manager of total rewards on the people operations team. At Namely, he manages the total rewards initiatives and strategy for their compensation, equity, and benefits programs. Michael has previously worked for WeWork, Etsy, and Deloitte, where he managed compensation and equity. So we'll wave again one more time, and then we're gonna go ahead and turn our cameras off. And before we kick things off, we are gonna launch a poll. So we're gonna gauge the audience as to whether or not you all have active time off policies at your organization. So the first question is, do you have a time off policy, yes or no? And then the second question is, what type of time off policy does your organization have currently? So feel free to vote on those polls for us. And then we'll leave this open for 30, 45 seconds or so, and then we'll share the results. Awesome. Okay. Perfect. So here's the results we've got. So 97% of you say yes, your organization has a time off policy. And then it looks like the biggest winner here, 72% of you said paid leave is the type of time off policy your organization has currently, followed by about 13% of you who have unlimited PTO, which we're going to speak to today on the webinar. And we've got some of you with other. I'd love to know what other is if you want to chat in and let us know what other is. And then for those of you that didn't see the poll, I'm so sorry about that. We'll make sure that you can see the next one, but it should pop up on your screen. So maybe if you're in full screen mode, it pops up behind. I'm not sure, but we'll take a peek. All right. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Robin, and she's going to start speaking about giving employees PTO.
All right. Thanks, Jessica. So let's review how much PTO employees are receiving. On average, you can see that employees are receiving 11 days per year. And roughly 16% of employees surveyed by TSheets said that they aren't receiving any PTO this year, while 21% are receiving between 6 and 10 days. On the flip side, you can see that 5% of employees say they receive 31 days or more. So despite PTO being a top employee benefit, many companies are actually hesitant to offer PTO. And here are 3 reasons why. Companies are afraid that performance will be affected. There's outdated mindsets. Some companies still believe that you earn time off by putting in a certain amount of time and sweat equity. And compliance concerns. Compliance is difficult to maneuver already, and adding an additional area to manage compliance-wise is a concern to some organizations. So how much PTO is actually being used? So here's a chart here that goes through number of days and percentages. So as you can see, for employees who are offered PTO, only 35% use all of it and leave 0 days behind. TSheets found that 30% said they left at least a day of PTO hours unused. And on average, employees left 5 days of PTO unused last year. That's roughly just under 564 million days of unused PTO time that your employees are leaving out there. We also looked at why are employees not using all of their time off. So again, 60% of employees say they've worked well on PTO. So most employees indicate work-related reasons for not using all of their PTO, while 40% save their PTO to carry over into the next year. Almost 1 in 3, about 32%, say they feel pressured to not take time off, despite the fact that they may live with stress as they describe as damaging. This could be because they don't get sick time or PTO, or perhaps due to the workplace culture and/or pressures. According to a study conducted by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, 80% of workers believe that they would be more comfortable taking time off if they were encouraged to by their manager. So with the appropriate structure in place, time off policies have beneficial impacts throughout the organization. And on the following slides, we're going to discuss 3 benefits of offering PTO: employee motivation, performance, and retention. So offering employees incentives such as raises and bonuses is great for companies that can afford it. But offering PTO is a great cost-effective option to stand out in a competitive market. Fortunately, QuickBooks found that some of the most highly motivating incentives are some of the most cost-effective. And so the top 5 incentives that motivate employees to work harder are listed here. So flexible work schedules. 76% of employees want this, but only 16% get it. Performance-based annual raises. 73% want this, only 10% get it. Discretionary bonuses. 66% want this, only 7% get it. Recognition awards or prizes. 63% want this, only 7% get it. And also the option to work from home. 57% want this, and only 8% get it.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Michael, and he's going to speak through employee performance and PTO.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jessica and Robin. Many people and employers assume that working round the clock will lead to improved work performance and that taking vacation time can negatively impact employee performance. Overwork is a problem that actually tends to lead to decreased performance, more mistakes, and more absenteeism. Namely conducted a survey to determine whether high performers were more or less likely to take vacation days. After analyzing Namely's vacation and performance review data for employees, a correlation quickly emerged. Employees who take more time off tended to have higher, not lower, performance ratings. And as a default, performance ratings in Namely are measured as low, core, or high. We found an appreciable difference when cross-referencing vacation data with these ratings. High performers tended to take an average of 19 vacation days per year, while individuals who scored lower took only 14. Employees feel valued when they are allowed paid time off, and this typically results in an improved work culture. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 3,500 people believe their job voluntarily every month. In such a competitive market, this is unacceptable. A study conducted by Owl Labs showed that companies that support remote workers have 25% lower employee turnover than companies that do not. But let's dig a bit deeper into the various time off options and the pros and cons of each of them. Unlimited PTO. While traditional PTO policies allot 11 to 15 vacation days per year on the average, unlimited policies are designed to give employees a limitless number of vacation days. Though the buzz around unlimited vacation seems to be continuously growing, in reality, only about 1 to 2% of companies offer an unlimited vacation policy currently. There has been much debate surrounding this practice. Some say that benefits the employer and shorts the employee because many employees actually take less time off when they're offered unlimited PTO than on the traditional plans. To highlight some of the pros and cons of each, some of the pros of unlimited PTO, there is flexibility. With unlimited vacation, employees don't have to perfectly ration out their vacation days in advance. Life happens. Also, it conveys a trust in the employees. It's really a great way to show employees that leadership trusts them to make responsible time off decisions. There also shows to be an increase in productivity. Data reveals that some of the best performing employees also actually take the most time off in an HR Mythbusters report. No more end of year rush. Employees on traditional plans might be slow to take vacation days early on, only realizing that they have a lot to use before the end of the year. If everyone takes vacation all at once, you might encounter some productivity issues. Some of the cons of the unlimited PTO: an underutilization of vacation days. Unlimited vacation can be problematic in an environment where employees feel that their value is linked to office face time. Many employees fear to come across as a lesser team player if they take too many breaks, resulting in less vacation time than the traditional plans. There could also be abuse of the system. Though it has been proven to be far less common than unlimited PTO, there is also a fear that employees will abuse the system and take way more days off than the average. There's also reduced seasonal scheduling policies that shorten office hours for a clearly defined period during slower months of the year, and typically this is in the summer, also known as summer Fridays. Some of the pros of this is that business slows anyway. In many industries, business tends to slow in the summer. A slow and empty office can often lead to a lull in employee productivity. Why not give the employees a break during these periods? It also could encourage efficiency. Even if employees are in the office from 9 to 5, that doesn't guarantee that they're efficient during those hours. Giving employees a shortened seasonal hours can motivate them to get everything done earlier in the week. There's also increased employee engagement. If you get your employees excited about this initiative, you will likely see increased loyalty and happiness. Employees who feel like your company cares about work-life balance will be more inclined to work harder. Some of the cons of the reduced seasonal scheduling can be an overutilization. Some employees may take advantage of the new program and leave earlier and earlier throughout the season, maybe even leaving some tasks unfinished before setting off for the weekend. There's also an underutilization that other employees may think that they have to prove their worth by not taking advantage of this perk. There are also hourly workers. If you have a mix or majority of non-exempt hourly employees, those employees will likely want to work as many hours as possible, as our paychecks do depend on it. This means that season scheduling is often a better fit for companies with primarily salaried employees.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and pass it back over to Robin.
All right, so paid leave occurs when employees are permitted to take time off for a special circumstance and still receive pay during the leave period. Many employers, about 43%, give employees accrued time off that they can carry over to the next year. So here we're going to discuss the pros and cons. So with regards to pros, this supports work-life balance. Generous paid leave policies can reiterate that your company supports the idea of work-life balance. An example here would be at Intuit, we rolled out, we expanded the definition of bereavement for employees and added pets. We found that, that furry friend of yours is definitely a member of your family, and we provide one paid day off if your furry friend passes away. And we've had great employee feedback going, thank you so much for doing that. We didn't realize how much it was going to hit our family, especially when, how do you have that message with your kids as to where did their family pet go? And so we've had some great feedback from employees in that situation. Also, it increases loyalty and retention. Robust paid leave policies contribute to a culture in which employees can trust that their personal circumstances will never put their job or finances at risk. Implementing policies that honor the personal lives of employees can help build employee engagement. So a con is not all laws are actionable. For example, we've seen New York recently released revised regulations for their paid leave law that was passed over a year ago. Right now, we're in the middle of Washington, D.C. They laid out a plan for putting their recent paid leave law into practice, but this almost took a year. While both laws offer generous provisions, due to the time gap in laws, there is work to be done prior to being put into place. Many companies now employ workers who either work from home or in remote locations, and some companies have entirely remote teams. Managing a remote workforce is not always easy, but it can vastly expand your talent network and lead to hires that may not have been otherwise possible. With regards to some pros, flexibility. Remote employees often build their own schedule, giving them a leg up in finding work-life balance. performance over FaceTime. Remote employees typically understand that they will be evaluated on the quality of their work rather than the hours clocked in the office, often resulting in better quality work. And of course, there's increased employee trust and loyalty. On the con side, less visibility into employee time management. It can be hard enough to trust that the employee next to you is being productive, let alone employees in other cities, states, or countries. Limited communication. For teams with employees in different time zones, it can be difficult to get everyone together for a meeting or even simply to ask a quick question. And then remote employee inclusion. Without the right engagement efforts, remote employees can feel like they exist on the outskirts of the team.
Thanks, Robin. Offering time off is awesome, but how do you ensure these policies are mutually beneficial for both parties? We'll dive into some tips and tricks in the next section. For unlimited PTO, eliminate ambiguity. Employees need guidance. Make sure you have clear boundaries around what is considered an actionable range of days to take off. Set these standards in the forefront in an employee handbook for employees to always reference. Make sure employees actually also take the time off. Consider requiring employees to take a minimum amount of vacation days per year. Get creative here. For example, full contact gives employees a travel stipend to encourage them to unplug and go on vacation. You could also build it into your culture. Managers and peers should encourage vacation time to help reduce any guilty or shame that employees may otherwise associate with taking time off. At Namely, we often share photos of vacations in our company's newsfeed, encouraging managers and employees alike to fully shut down and tune out while they're off. On the reduced seasonal hours, you can work with leadership to monitor and adjust. With leadership on board, you can set expectations and guidelines that are comfortable for all parties. Clearly define that new schedule. Define the period in which the seasonal schedule will take place and alert your employees throughout multiple channels of communication. And lastly, encourage participation. As with unlimited vacation, employees may have to overcome a hurdle of guilt for leaving early.
All right, so with regards to paid leave, make sure you keep an open dialogue. If your employees are sick, pregnant, or experiencing another time and resource-consuming situation, you want them to feel comfortable approaching you. When employees know paid leave policies exist, it will help open the door to better communication around how to juggle life events and job responsibilities. Plan ahead. Even if your city or state has not yet been affected by local paid leave laws or even sick laws, the speed with which cities are introducing new legislation should signal that it might not be long. Work with leadership to get ahead and outline what a revamped paid leave policy could look like at your company. Get everyone on the same page. Most of the recently introduced paid leave policies are made possible by a combination of employer and employee funding, your bottom line. So it's important that everyone in your company understands how the program works. Remote work and flexible hours. So make sure you establish clear guidelines. Set expectations for who is entitled to work remotely, how frequently, and under what circumstances. Certain roles may be less ideal for remote work, so just make sure that managers are working closely with employees to set ground rules and processes for remote work opportunities. Ensure your culture is inclusive. Use technology that helps remote workers feel like they're still integrated into the team. Chat platforms and video conferencing tools can enable employees to join meetings and keep in touch in real time. So for example, I'm actually based in Canada. We have Intuit has 2 offices in Canada. I'm in our office in Edmonton, but the majority of people I work with are all over the US. So every meeting we have is on video. So we make sure we can see each other, feel like we're part of the team. I work with teams in India, Israel, and we make sure we find times that work. And again, we make sure we are on video so that we can see each other. And don't forget about your non-exempt workers. Beware of compliance traps around hourly workers. The FLSA does not prohibit remote work for non-exempt employees. However, the guidelines around this kind of work are ambiguous. Make sure your remote non-exempt employees have a clear understanding of how to count and report the hours they have worked. Okay, so we've chatted through the benefits of offering time off and how to ensure various time off options are mutually beneficial. Time off compliance can be a bit tricky, and there are very few hard set rules. As a disclaimer, these compliance tips are provided for informational purposes only and do not constitute legal advice. No federal or state law requires employers to provide paid or unpaid vacation time to employees. If an employer offers paid vacation, it must comply with applicable state laws. Vacation pay statuses. No state requires employees to offer paid or unpaid vacation, but when paid vacation is available, those payments may be restricted by state labor and unemployment statuses. Use it or lose it vacation policies. State statutes often do not address whether employers can require the forfeiture of accrued vacation time that is not used by a specified date. However, some states prohibit these use it or lose it policies, such as California, Montana, and Nebraska. Payment of accrued unused vacation on termination. State laws vary on this topic. The states listed require a payout dependent on various factors, such as accrued vacation versus all vacation time. Some additional information here on compliance. Of course, there's collective bargaining. Paid and unpaid vacation is a mandatory subject of collective bargaining in a unionized workplace. Should PTO be used for FMLA? Well, FMLA is an unpaid leave. However, the law does permit employees to elect or the employer to require the employee to use accrued paid vacation, paid sick or family leave for some or all of the FMLA period. I believe there's a new law coming out that you cannot actually require your employee to take their PTO. It's up to them if they want to use it. You cannot force them to. So for example, at Intuit, we allow the employees the option when they're filing for a leave, and if they're eligible for short-term disability, we have a waiting period, and so we ask them, would you like to supplement your waiting period with your PTO? So whether that's their sick time, their vacation, or if they have any holiday time, and we ask them that question. And then additionally, we ask them a second question of, do they want to top up their short-term disability payments to 100% of their salary? So they get asked those two questions at the start of their leave, so they can make that choice then. PTO and overtime. Employers do not have to count paid holidays, paid time off, vacation, personal, and sick leave hours taken by an employee towards the calculation of overtime hours, because these hours are not actually worked and are therefore not considered hours counted towards overtime under the FLSA.
Awesome, thanks, Robin. So Namely and Intuit have both done some incredible things to craft and change up portions of their PTO policies. So I'm going to have Robin and Michael both share how PTO looks at Intuit and Namely.
Well, thanks, Jessica. At Namely, we offer employees an unlimited flexible paid time off. All employees are encouraged to take that planned time off from work. We know our people are really dedicated and hardworking, so we trust them to manage their time effectively. We are always taking a look at our policies in general, but our core policy does remain the same, and we have not run into any challenges.
So at Intuit, we're a little bit different. We offer vacation, sick, and holiday time off. We actually do offer unlimited vacation to our directors and above, but everyone else accrues vacation. We also offer parental time off. All parents can take up to 12 weeks of paid time off to care for their new child, including adoption and foster care placement. As well as I spoke to a little bit earlier, our short-term disability policy, employees are paid 100% of their base earnings for the first 8 weeks with no weekly maximum, and then they're paid 70% of base earnings for the next 17 weeks, up to a maximum of $46.15 per week. We also introduced a new program, Family Support Time, in August 2017. This allows employees to take up to 4 weeks of paid time off to care for and support a qualified family member, such as an aging parent, a dependent with a disability, or a family member with a chronic illness. So we have found employees have actually used this time to go check out a nursing home for their parent. We find that we have a lot of employees that are in that sandwich generation where they're looking after their kids, plus they're also looking after their parents. And where applicable, we allow them to have it run concurrent with FMLA. But sometimes we have a definition of a dependent that's not qualified underneath FMLA, so then they can take this family support time and it's paid at 100% for them. We also have birthday as a new program. We allow employees to take their birthday off. They have a 4-week window to take it, 2 weeks before and after their birthday. It's a paid day off so they can go celebrate themselves of what an awesome job that they have done. I spoke to earlier our pet bereavement, that we expanded our definition of family member. We want to recognize our furry friends are a member of our family. And we know at Intuit that every employee is unique and that the ups and downs in life are different for everyone. We make sure we have programs, resources, and time off to support employees in whatever stage of life they are in. We assess our time away programs annually to look at employee usage, satisfaction, and value. And we modify our offerings based on internal and external shifts in the marketplace and changing employee needs. And when we look at which benefits to offer, we consider 3 inputs: voice of our employees, market data, and external trends. So Michael and I also wanted to provide you with some tips and tricks of things that we've learned. So for an unlimited flexible PTO program, provide recommended guidance on how much time to use. With hardworking people, they often need to be reminded that they need to take the time, such as 3 to 4 weeks. Be flexible with what is a priority at your organization, understanding the busy season and business needs, but generally 3 to 4 weeks at companies, maybe more or less, depending on how your organization works. And at Intuit, our time off system sends reminders to employees when they are close to their vacation maximum. And so it constantly sends them reminders at certain thresholds to hopefully remind them that, hey, you're getting close to the maximum. You should probably take some time off. You need to take a break. Employee well-being is a priority for us, and the business needs to be flexible in order to accommodate throughout the year, especially during busy seasons. As an employer, you need to be aware of both federal and state programs. We touched on some examples earlier with regards to New York paid family leave and now Washington. And how do you keep up to date on these changing laws? You know, making sure you're partnering with legal on what's coming up and does it apply to you? Also talking with payroll, because a lot of those changes will impact payroll. What needs to be set up, what things that you need to do. So making sure partnering with legal and payroll is key. Communication, ensuring employees are aware of the programs available to them and how they work, and having open communication between the employee and manager.
Great, thanks a lot. Just to highlight some of our key takeaways and action items, we want to try to eliminate the ambiguity from the process, make sure there's clear and transparency. We'd also like to encourage the participation in the program and make sure that people are actually using it. We want to monitor and adjust the policies as needed to make sure it's happening and things are going the way we want them to go. We always want to keep an open dialogue as well to make sure that the policies are working, to hear feedback from our employees and our managers. And of course, we want to plan ahead for any changes in our PTO policies or for any potential future business changes.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Robin and Michael. We're now going to jump into a Q&A session. So the first question I have is actually for Michael. It says, we currently have a front-loaded system for associates who have been employed for more than 2 years. They receive 2+ weeks of vacation at the beginning of each year. We are considering moving to a monthly or per pay period accrual-based system. I'd like to hear your thoughts about how to work through that conversion process.
Thank you for that question. It's definitely best to communicate changes to any vacation PTO policies. Ideally, of course, I know it doesn't always work out that way, but ahead of a plan year ending, and then implementing that new policy at the beginning of the new plan year, just so everyone's treated equally on that new plan, and then also to make sure there's no prior commitments needing to be transitioned. I think you should also determine how you want this to work in practice. If you are going to move to that from what you currently have, just because busy seasons can affect when some employees can actually take that time off, meaning you don't, meaning that do you want to be flexible if people are taking off more time than they have accrued earlier in the plan year, or do you want to be strict with your policies and your plans and only allow employees to be able to take their accrued time off as they've accrued it?
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Robin, the next question's for you. Carrie asked, with flex time, they're a nonprofit with 20 employees, all salaried. All positions have flexibility for remote work or flex hours, except our office manager or front desk person. The position requires that person to be on site, but it feels a little unfair to that person that everyone else has flexibility except for her. We're not big enough to have redundancy to cover for her if she were to work remotely. Any suggestions?
Wow, that sounds like an interesting one.
Yeah.
We have our executive assistants on staff. They, none of them are remote or work from home. They're actually in the office every day because just of the nature of their job. We don't necessarily have an office manager or front desk person at our other sites. Those are manned by security, so it's a little bit different for us. But I would say, you have to make sure when you're having policies around flexible remote work or flex hours that, you have to make sure you're explaining why some jobs have to be on site versus which ones can work remotely. Because in that nature, if you have somebody that's a manager, office manager or front desk, they're there because they need to be managing the site, and it's hard for them to do that working from home.
Sure.
So I think you need to be really, really clear in your policy as to what has to be on site versus what has that flexibility.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. All right, our next question is from Michael. What are your thoughts on changing the language behind unlimited PTO? Should this maybe be called flexible PTO instead of unlimited to set the standard? Is PTO truly unlimited? Which, Michael, that sort of speaks to, I'll tie this question in if you can speak to it, on unlimited PTO with catastrophic illness or industry or extended leave under maternity, paternity, kind of how that all works. Is it really unlimited?
Yeah, I think using flexible PTO is a better wording choice overall, and it's one that Namely does use. It does establish that there are guidelines to the policy and might require pre-approvals, and it sets expectations better than the word unlimited. Even with an unlimited policy, you still need to track time off in order to require in order to watch for abuse of the policy and to prove compliance with various regulations, such as family and medical leave and disability coverage.
Awesome. Okay. Robin, next question's for you, and it's about paternity leave. So is paternity leave becoming the standard? Are your organizations personally offering this?
Yeah, so you'll see different names around paternity. Some people call it paternity, some people call it parental. It just depends on your company. So parental for Intuit being in the high-tech industry, when we look at our peers and who we're competitive with from a talent, where our talent is going, parental is really a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for years, providing that parental time off to employees coming back who just had a child, adopted one, had a foster care placement. Years ago, we used to have 2 weeks, then we doubled it to 4 weeks, and then we doubled it to 8 weeks. And we thought when we doubled it to 8 weeks that, hey, we're going to be right in line with market. And then we found out when we increased ours to 8 weeks, everybody else increased theirs. I think it's Netflix. Might be wrong. They give 1 year parental time off for their employees. We increased ours just in August to 12 weeks. It is becoming a very common benefit to add, but make sure when you're thinking of, is it something that you should be adding? Look at what your peers are doing. Look at what your industry is doing to make sure you're competitive and you're attracting the right talent to your company. But it is becoming very common.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Robin. I have one more for you, which is, let me scroll up so I can read it. We have remote workers across several states. We have 10 days vacation per year for all employees after 1 year of service. Are you saying that for vacation, we can't say use it or lose it within a calendar year for our New York and California employees?
So I would double check with your legal team on that, because there are some statutes that state that you can't have use it or lose it policies, such as what I mentioned earlier, California, Montana, and Nebraska. I would definitely follow up with legal to make sure what you have in your policy is correct, because I don't want to give you legal advice, but make sure you are following up with your lawyers and your legal team.
Yeah, that's a great note. There's a few questions in here that I think we'll try to speak to. We have one more question we'll ask live, and then we will try to answer all of the questions in a post-webinar email, but there might be some where we would guide you to speak to somebody legal for your company. For the last question we're going to go through live is for Michael, and that's, how do you handle an employee who abuses unlimited PTO, and how do you set guidelines as to how much PTO someone should take?
To reduce employees taking advantage of an unlimited PTO policy, PTO should be approved in advance by the manager, with the exception, of course, of calling in sick or for another emergency. An unlimited PTO policy does work best when the company culture already operates on a goal-oriented basis, and there are established performance goals, and that can really help mitigate this challenge if those goals are really not being met by the employee.
Great. Okay. So that's all the questions we're going to answer live. But like I said, we will be sending out a post-webinar email that has a link to the recording, as well as a downloadable slide deck. And that slide deck will include all of our sources. So the different surveys that we discussed and the different statistics that were discussed today. So I know we had some questions about that. So you'll be able to view all of those as well. And then, of course, we'll try to answer all the questions we can, barring that some of them might be ones we would recommend you speak to a legal representative about. So here's a little bit, a quick blurb about each company. So about namely Intuit and TSheets. I know we spoke to that at the beginning of the webinar, but we are going to launch a poll regarding that. So if anyone here is interested in seeing a demo of Namely or of TSheets or both. So just as you're answering this question, to give you a little perspective, Namely, of course, is, payroll, benefits, HR all in one rolled up. So that might be something for a back-end office solution, and you're looking for something like that for your company. That's what you'd want to see. And then TSheets, I mentioned at the beginning, but we're time tracking and scheduling. So if you were looking for a way to have employees track their hours, submit their PTO, see how much banked PTO they have, be able to request PTO from their managers, for example, that is something that TSheets would do. So TSheets is a front-end office solution. Your employees are interacting with it. They're tracking time, clocking in, clocking out. And then Namely would be back-end. So your HR, benefits, payroll all rolled up into one. And then, of course, Intuit as well doing QuickBooks, of course, doing payroll.